The following content originates from a series of ethnic studies lectures dedicated to the history of Latinx people in the U.S. We hope you enjoy them. Historians have long compared and contrasted the early nation building processes of the United States and Mexico. How does one country become a global superpower while the other continues to struggle with its democracy today? To answer this, let's first revisit the years leading up to the Mexican American War. In 1821, Mexico achieved independence after 300 years of colonial rule. The new republic faced economic hardship, political instability, and social fragmentation. It did, however, inherit substantial assets, including vast territories once controlled by the Spanish monarchy. Yet Mexico remained highly centralized, with most political and economic life concentrated in what is now Mexico City. Its northern territories were fragile, sparsely populated, and largely unprotected. Meanwhile, the United States was moving westward under the ideology of manifest destiny, envisioning Mexican Northern Territory, from San Francisco to Texas, as crucial to America's future. To respond to threats in the north, Mexico enacted an aggressive immigration strategy. The 1824 colonization law invited immigrants, primarily from the United States and China, to settle in the far northern regions, thereby populating the area, developing commerce, and integrating the territory more fully into the Republic. In exchange for extremely low land prices, 4 cents an acre, 7 years of tax exemptions, and other incentives, immigrants were expected to follow Mexican law, become Mexican citizens, and convert to Catholicism. This policy ultimately backfired. Instead of integrating the region, it facilitated the loss of the territory. A major source of conflict was the cultural collision rooted in long-standing colonial rivalries between Spain and England, as well as deep divisions between Catholic and Protestant traditions. As noted in the work of Raymond Paredes, anti-Catholic sentiment and racial prejudice intensified as American migrants moved westward. Many newcomers from the U.S. South brought enslaved people with them, creating tension in a Mexico that had already taken steps toward abolition. By 1829, the ratio of American immigrants to Mexican residents in Texas had reached 10 to 1. In response, Mexico passed a series of laws to reassert control, beginning with the decree of September 15, 1829, which abolished slavery throughout Mexican territory. Although aimed primarily at discouraging American slaveholders from settling in Texas, many circumvented the law by freeing enslaved people only to bind them to lifelong labor contracts. Another critical measure was the law of April 6, 1830, which prohibited further immigration from the United States. Contemporary Mexican newspapers lamented that Americans continued pouring into Texas like a flood, disregarding Mexican sovereignty and border laws entirely. Tensions escalated further with the rise of General Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna, known by some scholars as the Napoleon of the West. Upon taking power, Santa Anna sought to centralize authority, angering many across Mexico. Rebellions broke out in California, Oaxaca, parts of Central America, Nuevo León, and especially Texas. Figures such as Sam Houston and Stephen Austin used Mexico's political turmoil to justify breaking away. This brings us to the Alamo, an abandoned mission fort that American settlers, joined by a number of Tejanos, fortified. Despite warnings from his advisors, Santa Anna ordered an attack. After taking the fort, he permitted women and children to leave, but executed the men, including those who had surrendered. In the U.S., newspapers portrayed the Alamo as an attack on American freedom and frontier life. Its memory grew into powerful national mythology, captured in the slogan, remember the Alamo. Yet militarily, the Alamo was far less consequential than the Battle of San Jacinto weeks later, where Texan forces surprised the Mexican army and captured Santa Anna himself. Under duress, Santa Anna signed the Treaty of Velasco, recognizing Texas independence. The Mexican government never validated the treaty, arguing that the president had no authority to sign it. Nonetheless, the United States accepted it and exchanged diplomatic recognition with the new Republic of Texas. Texas remained independent from 1836 to 1845 until U.S. President James K. Polk, an expansionist who had long envisioned acquiring Mexican territory, annexed it. This decision outraged anti-slavery Northerners who feared the expansion of slavery and angered Mexico, which still considered Texas part of its territory. Polk used a border dispute along the Rio Grande to provoke Mexico, claiming Mexican troops had entered U.S. territory. The ensuing Mexican-American War lasted from 1846 to 1848 and ended with Mexico losing 55% of its territory. The war concluded with the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, which we will now examine. The treaty had two main objectives. One was to end the U.S.-Mexico War. The second goal was to establish civic and property rights for the people of Mexican descent who suddenly found themselves living within the United States. This process was extraordinarily complex. Imagine living in the same house, on the same street, in the same town where your parents and grandparents were born, only to wake up one day and find yourself part of a different nation. What would your future look like? Would you be considered Mexican, American, or something else entirely? Would you have rights? Would you be treated as equal or inferior? These questions were central to the treaty. Let's examine the articles most relevant to the Mexican-American experience. Articles 1, 5, 8, 9, and 10. Article 1 simply restored peace between the United States and Mexico, though even after its signing, both nations came close to war several more times. Article 5 established the new international boundary. While a small portion was modified in 1853 by the Gadsden Purchase, most of today's U.S.-Mexico border was created here. In doing so, Mexico ceded over half its territory, including present-day California, Arizona, Nevada, Colorado, New Mexico, Utah, part of Wyoming, and Texas. Article 8 addressed property and civic rights. It guaranteed residents three options. One was to remain in the United States and keep their property. The second one was to leave for Mexico while maintaining ownership through absentee landholding. And the third one was to sell their property and relocate to Mexico. The second section of Article 8 promised former Mexican nationals the choice to remain Mexican citizens living in the U.S., similar to permanent residents today, or to become U.S. citizens. They were given 1 year to decide, otherwise U.S. citizenship was assumed. While promising in theory, this section became highly problematic. For example, most inhabitants of the region were indigenous people whom Mexico had recognized as citizens, but the United States refused to grant them the same status. Article 9 addressed when these rights would be implemented, stating it would occur at the proper time to be determined by Congress, wording that led to further complications. Article 10 was completely deleted by the U.S., angering the Mexican government. It would have protected Mexican land grants in Texas, protection that the U.S. was unwilling to grant. Thank you for watching. I hope you find this brief review enjoyable.